Hello there guys, and welcome to this X-Plane 11 video. I have done an X-Camera tutorial in the past for X-Plane 10. Many of you have been asking me to do a refresher video of X-Camera for X-Plane 11. So this is exactly what we're going to be doing today in this video. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin our tutorial today. One is that there is a third giveaway and challenge coming up very soon on the channel in collaboration with my good friend Thomas Rasmussen, so stay tuned for that. And item number two is that I want you guys to let me know if you're interested in an X-Plane 11 behind the scenes series in which I show you how to create flight sim videos. If you're interested in such series, please do include your comments in the comments section below. The first thing that we need to do is we need to download X-Camera for X-Plane 11. So let us head over to the Stick and Rudder Studios website to download X-Camera. In order to download X-Camera, head over to the stickandrudderstudios.com website. I'll provide you with a link to the website in the description section of the video. Go to X-Camera and then download X-Camera. You will find the button to download X-Camera right over here. So we'll click that and then you'll get the file. The latest version of X-Camera is 2.2.1. Now X-Camera is a donationware and the developers actually provide you here with the feature list for what you get in the registered version. One of the big things in the registered version is the full airport camera support. But of course, you will be able to save all your settings for your transitions in the registered version. Now it's really up to you guys how much you want to donate. In fact, the developer tells you here that you can pay as little as nothing or any amount over $1. So in all honesty and in fairness to the developer, I believe that this plugin is worth anywhere between $20 to $25. Again, guys, it is your call, but I think it would be a nice gesture to show the developer some support in giving him something for developing such a great plugin for X-Plane. All right, so once we have the file downloaded, we can extract the contents, and you will end up with a folder called X-Camera. Now you simply copy that, or you can cut it and simply go to your X-Plane 11 installation, to resources and then plugins, and then right click and paste, and then you're done. As you can see, I have X-Camera installed here in the plugins folder, and I do have the registered version. Okay, now that the installation is complete, we can begin configuring X-Camera, but before we do so, I do want to show you some of the built-in features that ship out of the box with X-Plane. Now, the camera system in X-Plane is actually pretty advanced. It does have some deficiencies, and I think those deficiencies are addressed quite nicely with X-Camera. So, one of the things that a lot of the newcomers face is when X-Plane loads by default, it goes to the 2D panel view, okay? So right here, this is the 2D panel, and it looks exactly like the 3D panel, only you cannot move or pan around the 3D cockpit. Okay, and what you need to do in order to make sure that you're in the 3D cockpit is you need to hit Shift and 9. And now I can move in and around the cockpit and move the mouse around. Now, an easier way to do this is to set this by default. So for any aircraft, once loaded, you will be in the 3D panel view. And the way you do this is you just go to the settings menu, and we'll go to graphics, and then right here in visual settings is default view. And as you can see, I have selected forward with 3D cockpit. Okay, there is 2D panel, scenery, and HUD. Make sure you select forward with 3D cockpit. And that will ensure that every time the sim is loaded, that it is loaded in the 3D panel or 3D cockpit. All right. Now, another thing that you can do with the built-in camera in X-Plane is you can assign all kinds of custom views. So we are now, this is the captain view, And if I want to save this as a preset, then what you need to do is click on the left control button on your keyboard and then one of the numbers on your numpad. So if I click on left control and 0, now this view is saved. I'm going to use the arrow keys now to move to the first officer side, and I'm going to hit on control and number 1. And then I'm going to move a bit down here, and then I'm going to zoom in on our GPS, and then I'm going to hit control and number 2. So now 0, that's the captain view, number 1, that's the first officer view, and number 2, that's the GPS view. Very simple, very effective, and very fluid. Okay, another thing that a lot of you ask me is how do I pan around the airport area in X-Plane? Now, for the most part, when I'm creating video cinematics, I use X camera. So I use the airport views in X camera to create those sequences. But there is a nice way also in X-Plane, which you can use by hitting the C keyboard button. C is a chase view, and as you can see now, I can move up, I can move right, left, and I can also pan the camera around the area. Now also for zooming in and out, you can use the greater than and less than keyboard buttons. And as you can see now, I'm moving away from the scene, I'm moving away from the area, and now I'm moving back in so I'm zooming actually in and out using the greater than and the less than keyboard buttons. Okay? All right. I think that's enough. These are, I think, address most of the questions I receive with regards to the built-in X-Plane camera system. Let's now move on and configure X camera for X-Plane 11. We are now in the 3D cockpit. And the first thing we want to do is we're going to go to plugins and make sure that X camera is there. And currently it is disabled, and we'll keep it that way until after we are done with the joystick configuration. Okay, so just make sure that you're able to see X camera in the plugins menu. All right. Okay, so let's move on now to the joystick assignment, and this is my joystick, and here's what we're going to be doing. For panning the camera, we're going to be using the hat switch. Okay, so this switch here is going to give us the ability to pan left, right, upward, downward, and pitch the camera in all kinds of directions. And then we're going to use this button right here to cycle through the different categories and views within a category. Okay? All right, so the first thing we want to do is if I move the hat switch upwards, as you can see, it's highlighting the hat switch here. If I move it down, it's highlighting this button here, and right, this button, and left, all right, this button. So this is, again, a very nice feature in X-Plane, is as you move the buttons, press the buttons, it will actually highlight the button here so that you can very easily change the assignment to it. So if we move the upward position, this is assigned to move the camera with the mouse in a rotate pitch fashion. Okay. Now, of course, this is not going to be selected by default. So you're going to have to go to edit, and then you're going to have to go to, you can type here SRS, and then you'll get X camera. Under X camera, you'll find all these commands. And this is the one that we're interested in for the upward hat switch button. Okay, move the camera with the mouse in a rotate pitch fashion. Okay. Now, moving downwards, what I've assigned to this is to toggle the control panel of X camera on and off. For the right movement, or the right button on the hat switch, this moves the camera with the mouse in a left, right, forward, back fashion. Okay. And finally, the right, so I'm moving it now, I'm moving it to the left now, and the left moves the camera with the mouse in a left, right, up, down fashion, okay? And we're going to take a look at this in the sim in just a moment. All right, let's take a look now at this button here. Now this button is not represented visually here, not like the hat switch, but if you move it to the upward position, now I'm moving it up. As you can see, it says select the next camera in the current category. If I move it down, it says select previous camera in the current category, and then right, it will select the previous view in the category, and left will select the next view category. And again, you assign this in the same way. You just click on edit, and then go to SRS, X camera, and select the next view category. Now, if you can't see SRS in the menu here, just type it in here. Let me just show you here. Just if you type SRS, as you can see now, I have SRS at the very top, and underneath that you have X camera and all the commands. Now, another thing that I also have is the keyboard assignment. I have assigned a keyboard button to enable and disable X camera. And the way you do this is you go to SRS, X camera, and if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the list, you'll find toggle X camera on or off, and I've assigned Control C. The way you do this, simply click on the box and then just hit Control C on your keyboard, and it will register that there. And now we'll say done. We are now ready to enable X camera and explore its features, and we're going to do so by enabling it using the keyboard assignment that we've just created, which is Control C. So now X camera is enabled, and a couple of things to note when you enable X camera for any aircraft for the first time is that it will create the pilot view for you, and you will be unable to use the traditional way to pan around the cockpit, meaning you'll not be able to use the right mouse button and move. As you can see, I'm getting this shape, okay? But let us go ahead and explore the keyboard assignments that we've made. So if we move the hat switch in the upward position, we are able to pitch through the view. And if we move it to the right, then we can move either right, left, backwards, and forward. And if we move it to the left, then we are able to move upward and downward. And we can actually do circular motion almost. Okay. And then if we move it to the downward position, then that should pop the control panel. So now we know that all our assignments are correct. Also, we're going to go ahead now and create a couple of views to test the category and view cycling. So let's go ahead and create a view. So we're going to come here and we're going to say add, and that's camera 2. We're going to call it first officer. Okay, and make sure that after each camera you create that you hit on save all. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move down here. All right, and we're going to create another one which we're going to call GPS. So I'm going to create another view here, and I'm going to call it GPS. Okay, and we're going to save all. Now we have 3 views, which, by the way, you can cycle through them here. So this is the GPS first. Looks like we lost the first officer view. So let's move back here. All right, and we'll say save all. And now we can cycle through them. So this is not the pilot view. This is the pilot view. Not sure what's going on here. All right, so pilot view, GPS, first officer. So now we have all 3 views that we've created. Okay. Now, in order to create the smooth transition between those views, the only thing you need to do is you need to go and enable smooth transition for all your views. Okay. So I'm going to enable smooth transmission for the pilot view, for the GPS view, which is this one here, and finally for the first officer view. Okay. All right. And I'm going to say save all. Now we're going to use this switch. Let me just show you this again. We're going to use this switch here to test moving between the different views within our views. So now, as you can see, I can move between those views using the button assignment that we've created. I can move to and from previous and next views in this category. Okay, so now that we've created this, let's go ahead and create some external cameras as well. Okay, so the way we do this is, again, we're going to open the control panel, and now we're going to create a new category. Okay, and we're going to call this category external. All right. And as you can see, the first camera has already been created, but this is going to be an external camera, okay? So we're going to create here, we're going to click on external camera. And now X camera knows that this is going to be a camera that is outside the aircraft, okay? And I'm going to use, again, the assignments here to, find a nice view of the aircraft. So we'll call this one. So this is camera 1, and we're just going to call it cinematic 1, so Cin 1, okay? And then we're going to add another camera, camera 2, and I'm going to move it here, and let's see here. There we go. And I'm going to call this Cin 2, right? And save all. And then I'm going to move all the way to the back. And let's still here a bit. Okay, and we're going to say add
camera 3 to category
and we're going to say let's see, Cin 3. Okay, and now we should have Cin 2 we've lost, and the reason why we've lost Cin 2 is I did not create the camera. Okay, so this is Cin 2, and if we say save all, and let's see now. So this is now Cin 3, Cin 1, and Cin 2. Okay, so we have 3 different views now that we can play with. In fact, let me change Cin 2, bring it over here just a notch. All right, move it down. Okay, and we'll say save all. So now we have, this is Cin 3, Cin 2, and Cin 1. Great. So now we have 3 camera views, 3 external camera views, and what we're going to do now is we're going to say save all, and we're going to remove the control panel. Now we should be able to move through the external views, but also we can actually now move back to the inside using the button that we've created. So the button now will help us go from category to category and to cycle through the different views within a category. Okay, there we go. So now let's create some more interesting things, and let's find out what X camera can do for us. Now, X camera, by the way, is very easy to learn, but it's difficult to master. It is really a plugin that can do a lot of different things for you, and it's very feature rich and it's very, very powerful, but it does require a learning curve. But what I'm going to attempt to do in this video is to show you some of the basic features and how to create, some cool cinematic sequences. So we are now in the external view, and I'm going to bring up the control panel. Okay, so we are in Cin 1, cinematic 1, and let's bring this down here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to change the transition. As you can see here, it says smooth transition. So I'm going to change this to enable linear transition. And I'm going to enable auto advance to the next camera for this view. And now you have transition frames and transition seconds. What this does is that it creates the number of frames that X camera will generate to move from one camera view to the other, or you can specify the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want 300 frames for transition into this frame. So this camera, in order to come to this camera, which is Cin 1, from any other camera, X camera will generate 300 frames. I know this sounds confusing, but we'll see this in the video in a moment. We're going to go to cinematic 2, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say enable linear transition and enable auto advance to the next camera. And we're also going to say 300 frames. And finally, we'll go to cinematic 3, enable linear transition, enable auto advance to the next camera, and we're also going to give it 300 frames. Okay, and I'm now going to say save all. Now, if we remove the control panel, as you can see now, the cinematic sequence has been created. And as you can see, the transition is very, very smooth. And that's because we've asked X Camera to create 300 frames per transition. And that's a lot of frames for each transition. As you can see, there is a bit of an abruptness as the camera moves from Scene 2 to Scene 3, but there's also a way around this in X Camera. So we'll bring up the control panel, and here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go back to, let's see here. Now for Scene 1 or for Scene 3, what we can do is you can remove enable auto advance to the next camera, and the sequence should stop at the end. Okay, so make sure that the last view in your sequence does not have this option enabled, otherwise you'll go in an infinite loop. All right, so how do we smoothen things up a little bit? So this is the cinematic one, so this is camera one, and there's an option here say enable smooth camera joins. Okay, so I'm going to click this for cinematic 1 and cinematic 2 and for cinematic 3. Okay, and now let's remove the control. Let's say save all, and let's remove this. Okay, now of course, because we've disabled the auto advance to the next camera, we have to do it ourselves. So what I'm going to do, there we go. Now notice how smooth the transition is from one camera to the other. It's a lot different from, did you see that? Did you see how the abruptness was removed between the movement from transition from Scene 2 to Scene 3? That abruptness has gone away and it's now very, very smooth. Okay, let's bring up the control panel again. Now there is something called enable level camera, okay? And when you enable level camera, the camera will remain at exactly the same level throughout the sequence. Okay, so I'm going to enable level camera here, and I'm going to enable level camera there. All right, and we're going to say save all, and we'll remove this, and now let's see what happens. As you can see now, the camera will maintain exactly the same level as it moves through the transitions. It's not going to go up and down. It will maintain exactly that level for the duration of the transition. Okay, let's play with this a little more, and let's say enable track camera heading, and I'm going to go back to 2 and say enable track camera heading, and we'll do the same thing here. Okay, now we're going to say save all, and let's see what happens now. This is probably the smoothest of all the transitions that we've created. Let me try to... Okay, so this is the first one now. And this is the entire transition from the first to the last transition. As you can see, it is now extremely smooth. There's no abruptness in the transition whatsoever. It looks very fluid, and there's no jitters and no stutters. It looks really, really good. We are back in the 3D cockpit, and there are a few things that I can show you which can also enhance your experience with X Camera. Let's bring up the control panel, and this is the pilot view that we've created earlier. Now, X Camera fully supports track IR, so you can enable track IR for this view, or you can disable it, so you can have two pilot views, one with track IR, one without track IR. You can also enable head shake, and I do have head shake 1.6 installed. So for example, for the pilot view, we want to have head shake, so we'd like to see that effect, but probably not so when we are in the GPS view, because maybe we're trying to hit a button, and with the shake, you know, it would kind of get tricky. So you can leave that disabled. Another thing you can do in your views is if we go back here to the first view, you can enable the cinema effect. And now, as you can see, the entire picture is kind of moving. And by the way, this is a feature of X-Plane. So it isn't available in X-Plane out of the box. But again, you can enable it or disable it. And I kind of recommend that you disable this for the internal views, and you can have it in the external views for, if you're creating a cinematic. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I think you can play with these. And by the way, Bezier transition, linear transition, all of these are different ways, different algorithms for calculating how the camera moves. So you can definitely play with this. But I want to show you a little more in terms of what X Camera has. So another very cool feature that X Camera has is creating an orbit around your aircraft, and also creating a flyby. Okay, so if we say create an orbit, if we click on create an orbit, this is orbit 1, okay, and it will tell you to specify the initial camera heading, which is 270. Minimum height in meters says -3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to -1, and this is probably better tested when we are up in the air, simply because we are on the ground. It's going to go below the ground, so there is going to be a moment of of kind of blank screen, but that's okay. And the maximum height in meters is 3, duration in second is 30. Okay, and you can reverse the rotation, so you can either go clockwise or counterclockwise. And I'm just going to go ahead and say create. And as you can see now, we have a third category, which is now orbit. And it has automatically created 37 views for you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say save all, and I'm going to exit this. And now we have an orbit with the least amount of fuss. As you can see now, we're getting closer to the ground. But it's about a meter, so I said -1, so it will go 3 meters above the aircraft and 1 meter below. And as you can see, we have a beautiful orbit now around the aircraft, very smooth again, no jitters, no stutters. It looks just absolutely fantastic. Another thing that you can create with X Camera is you can create a flyby. And you create it in the same way that you create the orbit. So again, you have the camera attack heading, you have the initial height in meters. I'm going to leave everything here. I'm going to leave everything the same, and I'm just going to say create. And now we have even a fourth category, which has been created. And now this is the flyby. So if I say save all, and as you can see now, we have the camera moving towards the aircraft for a flyby. And by the way, this looks a lot better when we're up in the air, but as you can see, you have now a flyby with a minimum amount of effort, a simple click of a button, and you have a flyby of your aircraft. Another very nice feature in X Camera is the airport views. Now, it depends on how large your airport is and how many runways and parking positions it has. X Camera will automatically scan your airport area and create the necessary views for all your parking positions as well as all the runways. Now, the way you do this is, let's go ahead and bring up the control panel, and now we're going to say airport cameras. And now we're going to say, you tick here, and now we're going to say generate airport cameras. Now look at this, it says runways, horizontal and vertical, starting positions. Okay, so this is the horizontal and vertical views for those starting positions. The signs, sign camera radius in meters. Now, this is an interesting one because if you make this small, then you will end up with a lot of cameras, okay? So make sure this is a sizable number. Forward-facing starting position cameras, yes. Do I want to create airport targets? I do want to create airport targets, and now I'm going to say create cameras. Okay. Now look at the categories. We have starting positions. Now, by the way, this is now completely independent of the external views that we've created. So now we kind of move to a sort of mode 2. Mode 1 is the aircraft and all the views around the aircraft, and mode 2 is the airport. And we have starting locations, and we also have the runways. And as you can see now, I can cycle between the runways. Okay, so I have runway 6 and I have runway 24. And I also can now cycle through the starting positions. Now, this particular airport has 14 defined starting positions, and now I can cycle through all of these positions. Okay, as you can see. Not only that, but you can actually apply exactly the features that you applied in the aircraft views. So if I go to runways, now I have runway 24 and runway 6, and guess what? You can go ahead and say enable smooth transition, and now if I move between these two runways, as you can see, it's quite fast. But what I can do is I can say give it, for example, transition seconds, and if I say 3 seconds for this guy, and also 3 seconds for this guy, okay, and I'm going to say save. And now if I move, as you can see now, the transition is very smooth and very ideal for creating a cinematic. Now if I wanted to create a cinematic, I can, for example, say give this well, maybe 6 seconds, and we'll also make that 6 seconds, and we'll say save all. All right, and now if I move, as you can see now, it's much slower in moving from one end to the other. You can also use the frames similar to what we've done in the transitions. So if I say 300 transitions, for example, and we'll move also to the next one and remove the 6 here, and say 300 and save all. And now if I move, as you can see, the same effect exactly has been achieved. Okay, and you can do the same thing for the starting location. So I have now this start ramp from 13. Let me go to the first position. Okay, and I can say enable linear transition, for example. Frames is 300, and then I'll move to the second camera, and I'll also put 300 for the transition frames, and I'm going to say linear transition. I'm going to say save all, and now I'm going to go back. Now, as you can see, you have a cinematic sequence from the first to the second position. Here, let's do 2, and now let's do 3. We're going to add 300 here as well. Okay. Let's see, linear transition. Okay. And let's go to camera 4. Wait, camera 4. We'll do the same thing here. We'll give it 300 and enable smooth transition. Okay. Or I beg your pardon, linear transition. And we're going to save all. Now, if you go to the camera number 1 and start the sequence here, so I'm going to say save all, remove. Oh, there's one thing we forgot, which is enable auto advance to the next camera, and we're going to do the same thing for the second one as well. So we'll say auto advance, and for the third one we'll say enable auto advance, and for number 4 we'll just leave it as it is. Okay, now we're going to say save all, and we're going to move to the very first position, and we'll remove that. And now, as you can see, we have the cinematic sequence created from the first position to position number 4. Another thing that I want to show you in X Camera, which is very useful, is something called the view ID. As you can see here, there is a view ID, okay? Now what this is a kind of a quick reference to a view, to a preferred view. So for example, if we go to, hang on here to, okay, let me remove the airport cameras. Okay, so if we go to, for example, this particular view here, okay, this is now, it says view ID 1, okay? Now I can probably, if I'm in the airport camera like I was just now, I had to untick the airport camera to go there. And by the way, there is a button assignment, or there is a command that you can map to a button to enable airport cameras to avoid what has just happened to me. But here's what you can do, okay? On this guy here, view 1, and by the way, you have multiple IDs you can assign to different views. But let's go ahead and say that this is our default view, and we want to be able to access this view from any view without having to cycle through anything. So what we do is we go to the keyboard, or actually the joystick assignment. This is number 3. Currently is assigned to fire selected weapon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit that, and let's go ahead and type in SRS. Okay, and that will bring up all the X camera commands, as you can see. And now we're going to say select the first no, that's not what we want. There we go. Select the camera with the view ID of 1. Okay, and we're going to say apply. Now, what's going to happen if, let's say that we are in this cinematic view. Now, if I click the button that we've just assigned, it will bring me back to this view. Isn't that cool? So you have about 1 through 25 IDs that you can assign to your preferred views, and then map those views to a custom ID in order to use with an X camera. All right, guys, I think what I want to do now is I want to take this aircraft for a very short flight to show you the orbit and flyby sequences up in the air, because I think they actually look great up in the air. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, we are ready to depart, and remember that we have the head shake enabled for this view. So let's go ahead and give it full power here. And this is, yep, you can see that head shake is doing its thing. Right, 60 knots, and rotate. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at, see, this is now the flyby, and as you can see, it creates for a beautiful cinematic sequence. And this is the orbit. Very, very nice indeed. So this is how I create my cinematics. I use X camera. In my opinion, it is the best camera system for X-Plane 10 and X-Plane 11. Well, guys, this brings us to the conclusion of our video today. I hope that this has been a useful and informative video. I do want to thank you guys very much for watching the video, and until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other. I will see you all very soon. Bye-bye for now.